asked was who should lead research universities? Should they essentially be good scholars or good managers? And I found, after doing research for a number of years, doing longitudinal research, that the best universities in the world were more likely to be led by top scholars, and that top scholars went on to improve the performance of universities. So that's when I thought there was something here. The next thing I wanted to do was to find out how much I could generalize this pattern in other settings. So I went inside universities. I looked at deans of business schools, and I found the same thing. I found that the best deans in business schools were those who had been really strong scholars. And then I looked at heads of departments. We looked at 58 US departments of economics over a 15-year period, and we found that the economics departments that went on to improve the most were the ones that were led by most highly rated scholars themselves. Next step was to step outside universities and see how much I could generalize this pattern in different settings. So I looked at sports, I looked at Formula One racing, I looked at basketball, I looked at football, and I also looked at hospitals, professional service firms, and essentially I found the same pattern in all of these organizations. People who were core business experts in the organization seemed to be associated in the long term with better organizational performance. So recently, we've started to look and ask the question of why. Why did this happen? Why do experts in the core business seem to have this effect on organizational performance? And what we found in a study of 35,000 US and UK employees who were matched with their firms, we found that people who reported the highest job satisfaction also had bosses who either worked their way up through the company, who had started the company, or who could do the job of the employees who were assessing them. So what we think is happening is that we think that bosses who have walked the walk, who are credible, who understand the kinds of jobs that other people do, create the right working conditions so that other people within people who are their subordinates can flourish. And we know that high job satisfaction it contributes to organizational performance. This has been found now in a number of settings. Happy workers make productive workers. And if you think about that, that's kind of a duh thing, makes complete sense. So we think that this is the way that it happens. And we found that now in 5 different data sets in hospitals and universities, we found the same thing. People who report that their immediate boss was an outstanding expert also report high levels of job satisfaction, and they're less likely to leave their organization. And that is also very important because employees quitting jobs is very costly for organizations. So you want workers to stay in them. We looked at women negotiating pay rises. It's been believed for many years that women don't ask for pay rises when they're in jobs. And we managed to get hold of some data from Australia where we found in 800 firms, we found that actually women do ask for pay rises, but they don't get them as often as men do. What we did was we were able in this work-based data to look at men and women like for like positions. So there were men and women who had the same education, they were the same age, they had the same kind of careers, and we then could compare, was there a difference in whether men and women asked? We found that men and women were both asking to the same extent, but men were more successful 25% of the time. They were more successful in gaining a pay rise. So what's interesting about this research is it somewhat pushes back the belief that women aren't successful in negotiating pay rises because they don't ask, because we found that actually they do ask. Now, it doesn't mean that they never didn't ask. This is probably something that's changed in society. Women have become more confident to ask. But it also shows that there has been discrimination, that even when women ask, they weren't getting. One good positive thing for women who are under 40 and men is that in the more recent data, looking at just women and men who are under 40, we find that men and women are asking and getting to the same extent. We don't know whether this is a cohort effect. What that means is that going to stay the same when they go through their careers? Will they always be on the same pay? Because we know that there's about 17% difference in Europe between men and women's pay. But this is a very positive sign, and it looks like maybe workplaces are recognizing that there is an inequality in pay, and they're starting to pay men and women the same to the same extent and equally.